The next part we'll talk about, we talk a little bit about the principles, what the heck is Lean, the culture, problem solving, the 8 ways. Next, we're going to dive into a few of the tools, a few of the Lean tools, okay? And this is kind of our house of tools. There's different levels. You have level 1, level 2, which is all about foundation and stability. Foundation and stability. And a lot of the Lean tools that we'll talk about. At foundation, we'll have a whole class just on the Lean management system. That's when we'll start talking about things such as leader standard work or getting our metrics and goals visual in departments and such. Driving the ideas, the engagement piece. Understand the direction, we'll touch on it a little bit, but that's maybe a strategy deployment, different class. And value stream thinking, I'll show you a couple examples of value stream maps coming up next. And then the stability piece, a lot of the tools that we'll talk about today, 5S, or making sure our equipment is up and running, or visual management, and those are the things we're going to really kind of dive a little bit into today, okay? So, first thing though, value stream mapping. It's a great little tool to see flow, This is an example of a value stream map that was done where it was literally, it was trying to solve the problem. Good question. What problem are we trying to solve with it? This particular group was trying to solve the admission, the amount of time it takes to admit a patient to med-surg. And so what they did is they just followed, jotted down the process steps, then they walked the process, and they were looking at it from the perspective of how much time does it take each of these activities versus total amount of time, and then it gives them a tool, gave this team a tool to just understand better where that waste is and try to drive that waste out. Okay, that's what a value stream map tool is meant to do. In today's class, I'm just going to kind of explain what a value stream map is, not how to create one. That's a separate class that I do, or coaching opportunity if anybody's interested in it. Okay. So whiteboard is a great way to actually map that process. The key point, though, is once you map it out, what do you do? Implement it. Before that, take a picture of it. You walk the process. That is the key point to any value stream map. You have to walk the process, because 9 times out of 10, once you get done walking the process, you will modify that value stream map based off of things that you didn't know were happening. This is my starting point almost in every project I do, is doing a process map or a value stream map. So reliable, 100%, because once folks see the waste, a lot of times the ideas start coming through quickly as far as what to potentially experiment with. So here's another example. So the reason I put this example here is this one was done on a whiteboard. This was done with Post-it notes. Post-it notes are a great way because this was actually an emergency room where it was literally arrive, triage, nurse assessment, diagnostics, and looking for, and then we walked the process. And this was the remnants of it. All these red bursts, all these red things are things that we found to be problems that team wanted to solve once we walked the process. For example, they were batching orders when they were entering the orders, or they were batching lab collection, and that was causing a delay of a few minutes. Urine collection process was taking 20 minutes longer than it should. We were timing this stuff, literally observing and timing. And on the back end, it was all about the admissions process that was causing delays. And so, again, those red bursts are areas that team then started looking at to try to improve and eliminate some of those red bursts. That's the problems the red bursts are. We call them Kaizen bursts, places for improvement. Okay. Again, typically my starting point, when I start working with folks, it's literally I start drawing these boxes and just to try to understand what that process looks like, and then trying to collect some data to go with it. So, because that's the understanding the direction next. And what I'm depicting here is this is strategy deployment. So this is a hospital system up in Wisconsin where they said, you know what, in 3 years, there were 3 areas that they wanted to really focus on to try to improve. One of them was horizontal thinking. And what did we talk about with Dan today? How do we typically think? Vertically. Yep. And how does a patient see it? Patient walks the process horizontally. And so that's what they wanted to get out of the paradigm of silo thinking and get into horizontal. They just called it horizontal thinking, but thinking going through it just like a patient does. They wanted to get folks engaged, and that was their idea system. Trying to get, I think their metric there were 4 ideas per person per year implemented. So 4 ideas times 450 people would be what? 1,800 ideas implemented, right? So think about that. That's that engagement piece. Expense reduction because of the cost piece. So you've kind of seen a little bit of what Dan was even talking about. That's the executive wall in this case, right? And then on the south wall, the executive south wall, this was their key metrics. They had their own metric board. Are we as an organization doing well? Scoreboard, right? Are we doing well or are we not? And 3 red metrics in a row, 3 months in a row, meant that one of the executive leaders were going to do some problem solving. Do an A3, they called them, which is just problem solving, okay? To try to figure out what's causing that to be red for 3 months in a row. Okay? So then, that's the executive wall, right? And then it gets deployed to the departments. When y'all were doing involved with Lean prior, did y'all have visual metric boards? You did? Okay. Were kind of key metrics for success in that particular department?
It was included, though, when we had Lean.
Okay. All right. Well, like Dan was saying, you could have quality in service. There's excellence in operations. There's growth. There's high-performing talent, right? And this particular department was just an extension off of the senior leader board, where it was this was the overall organizational objectives for quality and service. That was the department objectives for quality and service. And then underneath that was what we call a lag metric, and that was just typically an outcome metric. So for quality and service, that could be harms. And then a lead metric, that was something that you get measured daily. What if I were to ask y'all harms? What are some things that if we did it, we could reduce the number of harms if we did it well? And that's what all we're trying to do is understand what is it. A lot of times we have a lot of best practices in healthcare, bedside shift report, fall protocol. And so one hospital I'm working at, there are 4 main protocols that they're tracking daily. Bedside shift report to get to mastery, the falls protocol, and another one was debrief and brief, doing your debriefs and briefs flawlessly. And then the 4th one was actually about medication management of errors that they were getting with their medication management, pulling it from the PICSs. So then you measure that daily. And if you have a problem, why would you measure that daily? It changes daily. And from a problem-solving perspective, is it easier to solve a problem right when it happens or a month later? That's why we solve it daily. That's why we want those daily ones. And then that lag metric just lags it back. Yep, what we're doing here is improving the harms that we have, if that's the case. Okay? And then underneath, there's our ideas to improve. So think of it this way, from a flow. Quality and service, these are the things we want to do. This is how we're going to measure success. This is what we're going to measure success daily. These are the ideas to improve when we're in the red there. And these are the ideas to try to get that to be green. This should be green. And then we should be meeting our objectives. That's the whole premise of strategy deployment. And again, we'll dive much deeper into that. From a stability standpoint, now that we want to be looking at too from, I call it the 4 M's, okay? Having 3 daughters and a wife, there should be people power, but then it's not 3 or 4 M's. So we're going to call it manpower for today. What kind of stability do we need with our staff? Low turnover. What else? Okay? That could really be, we want them following this standardization, right? We want them to show up to work on time? I heard a little bit of that earlier, so just thought I'd throw that in. Well, how about machines? What do we want our machines to do? Work. We want them to show up to work on time and actually work. Exactly. We need stability in our equipment, don't we? Yeah. How about our methods? What kind of stability do we need in our methods? Consistency. And what was it? Standardization. Yeah. How about with our material, our supplies? Cheap. Cheap but quality, yeah. What was it? Standardized. I'm a big believer in standardized supplies. Do we want them when we need them? Yeah. So that's all we're talking about is, from a people's perspective, they're showing up. They're capable of doing the job. They're trained, right? That's the dependability. Reliability of our equipment. It's available when we need it. It's performing at the level it should be performing. So often I see lab equipment where it's like, oh, it's not performing where it should. We're running like 20% slower. Right? Or quality. Quality as well. Making sure that equipment delivers a quality readout. Method, that's the consistency we talked about. Having a capable standard or best practice, following it, and as we'll talk about, that standardization leads us to improvement. Okay, and then finally on material, on time, right amount, with low variability, and that's the variance piece. Okay, so basically though, if we, from a stability standpoint, if we can plan those, have that plan in place, we can a lot of times expect the outcome. Okay? And here's the thing. If the expected outcome doesn't meet our actual output, we begin problem solving. And to begin problem solving, we have to go back to, are one of these failing us? And if so, why? Or maybe we don't have something in place. Right? Maybe we don't have a standardized process. Okay, maybe we need to standardize it. And that's what we talk about with stability. We have to get stability before we get into true continuous improvement. So standards, where the heck do they fit? Standards are the foundation that defines how we work, how we see abnormality, and how we make improvements. So one of the things you're going to see as we go through it is, first thing we have to do, we'll talk standardized work in 5S next. And Kanban just means card. It's a supply chain process, basically. And I'll show you an example of a Kanban. We have to set up the standard. Then, as each day goes by, we're doing our work every day. Well, we have to check our abnormality, and that's using visual controls. Okay, and we'll talk. Lean is going to be a very visual. Every tool that we'll talk about is going to be very visual. We like to be as transparent as possible. And why do we want to see our problems? So we can fix them. And that's what Lean is trying to do, is make our problems visual. Okay, and then that allows us to do the problem solving. So that's where standards kind of fit in. One of the tools for this, I've heard a few people talk about already, is standardized work. Okay, and that is, it minimizes variation. It creates that best practice, right? And again, I look at healthcare because you have so many best practices that, as a nation, we look at. You know, you talked about the 3 Ps earlier. That's a nice best practice. Unfortunately, sometimes we get into 7 Ps and 8 Ps, but the mastery of bedside shift report. Bedside shift report is a great tool. That's a standardized tool, right? How do we get to mastery? I have one organization that's actually starting to videotape what mastery looks like, so that we can see what mastery looks like. But that's standardizing our work, what we want our folks to be doing. Okay, and it's the basis for the continuous improvement. And then the continuous improvement is the lifeblood of our standardized work. Too often we set up a standard and we never take a look at it again. And what changes over time? Standards should change. I always want to see a standard to change. If it's stagnant, that's telling me we're not using it. Or at least we're not documenting it. Standards are meant to change. And you know, like the strategy deployment standard, the Columbus, Georgia hospital, they put together a really nice strategy deployment standard, and I said, after the first quarter, if you're not on Rev 20, I'll be disappointed. Every meeting, you should be going through your debrief, going, What do we need to do differently next time? That's the purpose of having a standard, is to improve it. That's the purpose of a debrief as well. So there's just one example of standard work. This is for central line dressing change, hand hygiene, and it really is. It's not the big book of how, it's just a quick, down and dirty, these are the steps. These are some of the key points for those steps, right? And I'm following these steps in this order. So assess, explain, gather items, prep, sterile. Why are we following the steps in a specific order? Best practice. What else? So we don't miss something. What if one of these steps, say, I don't invent this, is 10, 11 could actually, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if I do 10 first or 11 first. Why do we want to do 10 first?
It makes no sense to do it after because it's already.
Yeah, but sometimes there's steps, right, that happen, and in training we'll go, it really doesn't matter if you do 10 first or 11 first. It matters, okay? And when it comes to problem solving, if everybody's doing it in a different order, we have variation. So we want to do it as much as we can in the proper order, okay? So that's just one example of standard work. It's just outlining that best practice. A lot of times we can get into what we call cross-training. Is cross-training a good thing in healthcare? Yeah. And this is an example of a cross-training matrix. All right, so this is our AU vet school. So I got a chance to work with the vet school at Auburn University. It's actually so much fun seeing dogs and cats as the patients. And they had a vision. They had their challenge. We went to University of Florida. And you can kind of see that here's this is what they called this is their customer service side, okay? So if you are a patient, you're a dog owner, and you bring your dog in, you would see a different person for appointments, a different person for discharge, a different person for admissions, and a different person that would answer the phone. They had people specialized for each one of those 4 steps. We went to University of Florida, and University of Florida did it differently. And if you were a dog owner or a cat owner, would you rather deal with 4 people or 1 person? And that's exactly what University of Florida was doing. And so in order to do that, we had to develop that cross-training piece at the vet school. And they bought into it hook, line, and sinker. Yes, we should get all of there's their folks, Montana, et cetera, 5, 6 people, and let's cross-train them to be able to do all of those. All right? And so that's what we did, where cross-training matrix, there's our key processes. The level of definition was there. Level 1 was basic. Level 2, they could do it with assistance. Level 3, they could do it without assistance. Level 4, they were able to train. And then there's their schedule for training, too. And so often we develop this without the schedule for training. Now, what Jim's referring to is, if I were to ask you, who's the kind of the star performer there? Who's able to train on all 4? Montana. She was. She could do it. She was the person that actually did all the training initially as well. So, and then Maxine here, you can tell she was solely on discharge at the time. And so you can read it this way to go, all right, I need to develop. I need to develop my folks. Not everybody has to be all 4 pieces of the pie. Not everybody has to train. But we want everybody at least 3 pieces of the pie. And the other way you can read it, though, is this way. And this isn't a great example, but so often, sometimes I'll see 1 person, and then in this particular process, this might be 1 piece of the pie, none, 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 1. If that person is absent, on vacation, what happens to that part of the process? Yeah, and does that ever happen in real life? And that's what it's showing our depth chart. And I'm a big believer in being too deep on every process step. Okay. Actually, I just got done talking to my wife about this. She's 1 deep in 1 spot in their department. She's just scrambling right now, going, I got to figure this out. We got to get too deep, because if that person left, I'd be in deep water. So she's going to do a Harvey Balls matrix. The cross-training matrix, they're great. And it really documents the training, where people are at in the department. and shows it two different ways. Okay? And then how we do our training. And again, this is a whole separate class, but just to introduce the term, it's called job instruction. Okay? And what job instruction does, we prepare the worker, we present the operation, we try out the performance, and we follow up. Okay? And so often we do training through following a person versus really do it for them. There's the whole premise of job instruction. You do it for them, explaining the key points and the reasons why. You do it 4 or 5 times, maybe something like that, and then you observe them doing that process 4 or 5 times, correcting each time that a mistake happens, and have them go through key points and reasons why. And then you follow up, have that follow-up period. And this is a document. This is what the vet school did. So for the admissions process, there's their 11 important steps. There's their key points. There's their reasons why. And that's what Montana utilized to train each and every person. And all 4 processes had what we call the job instruction. And the difference between job instruction and standardized work, job instruction is for training, standardized work is to confirm or following a process. Okay. So, stability 2, right? Equipment reliability. What did you all say? It's important that the equipment does what? Works. Batteries. Telemetry. This was a nice little visual that I could walk past, and unfortunately there was a lot of red, out of order telemetry units. Huh. Things that make you go, huh. What do you think is going on with the telemetry units? Where'd they end up? They were ending up in the wash. Believe it or not. So they were out of order because they were getting washed, I guess, here. So, but having a visual system to depict it. This was really cool because this was a nursing home. And they were having a problem of having charged batteries. And so all they did is the charger was this piece of tape over here. That the charger was right there. And there's a racing stripe here. And 3 batteries, they always had to have at least 2 batteries charged. And it was a visual that you could walk past and you could see at a glance, are we out of batteries or not? All right? So you throw a battery on the charger. It's a way to always have charged batteries. And then this one here, this monitor here, it was funny, this was a different hospital, and every time they went to get a unit, was it charged? And so they had 4, and they actually had a nice standard location for where all 4 should go. You just couldn't tell if they were plugged in. And so they actually had a 4-headed plug, and they put 1 and then put 1 on the monitor, 2 on the plug, and then 2 on the monitor. You could see at a glance if all 4 were in, or if 3 and 1 was in the room. You could see at a glance whether they were charging or not. So, all right. Little vision test here. If you could, just tell me what color the font is. What color do you see with the font? And just kind of say it out loud. Okay? Right now, what color? Thank you. Exactly. All right. We'll get started now. Oh. Red. Blue. All right. Did everybody get them all correct? All right. So we're doing good. All right. Round 2, same speed. Do the same thing if you could. Out loud. Huh? What happened there? Things have, by the way, I am terrible at this one. I am truly colorblind. I failed miserably. So, but what happened there?
Read the word instead of looking at the color.
Yeah, yeah. All right, let's try this one instead. Purple, blue. Your guess is as good as mine, but so much better, right? A little bit better. We had a little bit more practice. That's the same order as round one. Was that last round easier or harder than round one? A little bit harder, right? So definitely threw you more into, you had to focus on it, right? Anybody notice a figure at the bottom right of one of the last set of slides? Nobody noticed it? Heart? Right there, right? Huh, what happened there? Too focused, right? I put you in task focused, really did. Two kind of learning points. One is, whatever colors you use, make sure you standardize them. One time I was a piece of equipment where the stop button was green. Things that make you go, The bigger learning point, though, really is the importance of us as coaches as we start into our lean journeys, because staff, are they task focused? And as soon as you go task focused, are you seeing your surroundings as well? The coaches, us as leaders, have to take that step back and actually be the ones that are looking for that heart, looking at the process, going, what is it? Because when you live it every day, you might sit there and go, I can't believe they haven't seen that yet. I could stand up here and go, I can't believe you guys didn't see the heart. It was right there. That's the purpose of coaching. That's the purpose of the Gemba walks. That's the purpose of observing the process. Not getting in the details, but just standing back, looking at the big picture rather than that task focus. Our brains are not wired to see the big picture if we're task focused. Okay. And that's why I like to have visual systems so that I don't have to confirm whether something is good or bad. You know, stoplights, great example. Red light, what do you do? Stop. Green light, what do you do? Go slow. Yellow light, what do you do? Speed up, floor it. What if there's a police officer right next to you? Speed up. What if you have your granddaughter, grandson, or a baby in the back seat? Slow down. What if it's snowing? Yellow light brought what into the equation? Variation. Yellow lights are variation. And that's what we want to try to avoid as much as we can. Notice how green and red, you all had the answers pretty quick. That's what we're trying to do with as many of our processes as we can. Okay, just having that standard in place to regulate green from red. You know, this is a visual, and there's three kinds of forms of visual communication. This is a display, right? Just love that approach. You know, if we are, you all have something like this in your rooms that communicates? And who utilizes this communication tool? Nurses, patients, family. Yeah, it's a really nice communication tool for all the above. Doctors, right? And so that's just what we call visual display communication. Here's a visual measurement. This is that Kanban I was referencing. So this is supplies. This was in a radiology department. And the supplies down here, you can see the green cards. That meant we had enough stock of that particular supply. When you got to the red card, that meant it was time to reorder. And you would take the red card and give it to a specific person. Her name was Sarah. You give it to Sarah, and Sarah would reorder. And on that red card, it had what the amount to reorder, where you reordered it from, how much to reorder. So that's what we call, it's a Kanban card. Kanban just means card. But it's a nice visual way to control our inventory, the right amount of inventory so we don't run out. And here's the one for wheelchairs. If you're missing wheelchairs, this was actually, of all places, North Mississippi in Tupelo. Been working with them a little bit the last couple of years. And that, can you tell where the wheelchair belongs? Where's the wheelchair belong? Yeah. Now, what's missing? There's one thing that was missing is if the wheelchair was missing away from that little placard on the floor, how would you know what wheelchair belongs there? Exactly. So that's what they ended up doing, is actually numbering. That's 4 North's wheelchair. So the 4N ends up on 3S. They knew it was in 4N, and they knew where it belonged. So it's just like when you mail something, the return address label, That's your return address label. Okay. 5S. Anybody familiar with the term 5S? Okay. So it's our workplace organization tool. And literally it's 5 S's. The process is 5 S's. First one is sort. Sort what you need, get rid of what you don't. And then there's a red tag process. The things that you don't want to utilize, you either toss it or you find a new home for it. Okay? The new home, sometimes we put a red tag going. We don't know where that home is yet, but we will find a place for it, whatever it is. The things you want to keep that you sorted, now you set in order. You set it in order. Okay? You put it in the right spot. Again, another whole class just on 5S. But you want to just make sure you're not putting heavy things up top, or you want to always do your high usage at shoulder levels to pull from. Things like that, things you want to consider in your 5S. Shine is the third S, and that's all about keeping it clean, but also the replenishment plan, making sure that if it's supplies, we're replenishing on a timely basis. It could be daily, it could be weekly, whatever that time standard is that you set. The fourth is what we call standardize, and that's where now all of a sudden we standardize certain aspects. Maybe a certain color means something to your organization. One hospital, all red containers were for blood supplies. All green containers were for oxygen. All yellow was for urine. That's just the way they standardized it. But that's the standardization that sometimes we can do so that we're not confusing all these different color bins, if that's what it is. And then sustain. What sustaining is all about is auditing. It's making sure that we are following what we say we want to do from a 5S perspective. All right? Why would we want to do something like this? 5S scenario. That's one reason. Yeah, I like that one. What's that? More efficient. That's an outcome that what?
Makes everyone's job easier.
Makes everybody's job easier. Yeah. What if I were to say those are all outcomes of doing it, and the real reason we want to do it is to make our problems obvious? If we're a problem-solving organization, we want to set the standard in place so that we can make our problems as obvious as possible. And all those other reasons are great reasons. It does, a lot of times we can be more efficient. A lot of times it does lead to less frustration. A lot of times it means that I do have supplies when I need it. But we want to make sure we have a system in place to problem solve off of and make it as visual as possible. And some folks will actually call it 6S. That's just putting safety into it. Okay. So, nursing home, maintenance example. That was before. This was the maintenance department in the nursing home. And there's their after. What was really nice about it is they used the whole grocery store concept, different supplies, and then they used the red-green card concept to reorder certain parts that were needed for their equipment. Okay. Here's the other side, before, after. A lot different. And there were 3 different 40-foot trailers of junk taken out of this area, which is very typical. Here's a hospital example. Drawer that looked like this before with all the bands. And there's their after. You can see at a glance when you're empty. All right? You can see at a glance what should be in there. Really nice, simple way of actually doing it. Another key point with 5S, always take before pictures and after pictures so you can tell your stories. All right, let's do a quick 5S game. All right, so this is what we call a 5S game, okay? On the front, we're going to do 7 rounds, okay? And you just mark your score after each round on the front. Here's our visual standard. So you're going to, when you turn over the sheets, which I don't want you doing yet, there'll be these numbers. 1 through something. The whole goal is to cross out the numbers going in order, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Good is when you start in the bottom left and end in the bottom right with an arrowhead. All right. That's not good. That's not good. Quality is bottom left, top right. You're not able to rotate the pages, and here's the thing. If your number shows up like this on the sheet, the arrow goes that way. Bottom left of the number, top right of the number. If the number shows up like this, two, oh, did I mention? You go in order. You got to find 1. Then you got to find 2. 2 will be like that. What comes next? 3. God, good group. So the arrow goes like that. All right? So, key points, the arrow direction, and you go in order 1, 2, 3. Okay? And no rotating your paper. All right. So, I'm going to give you 60 seconds. And when I say go, just go to the next page, tear off the sheet and go to the next page. Ready? Go. It's the time. And stop. If you're good on the front page, just put in the score, what number you got to. I need a 5S, my clicker. So, that's our current workplace, is all that is. Were there numbers in there that, if our goal was to cross off between 1 and 49, were there numbers in there above 49? Yes. Yeah, so what could we do there? Yeah, so we just want to sort out the things we don't need, right? So let's sort out. If our goal is numbers 1 to 49, let's just sort out the numbers we don't need. So on the next one, I'm going to give you 10 less seconds. Okay? And when I say go, the numbers above 49 have been eliminated. Ready? Go. Time. How'd we do? A little bit better? Remember, we had 10 seconds less as well, so even if you got to break even, you did better than the first round. Okay. Now, did anybody notice any patterns? Numbers were in the same spot. Anybody notice any patterns where they're in the same spot? They go up and down. So, exactly. So this is what happens in real life, right? Sometimes it's like, oh, somebody actually knows the secret. There's a secret to this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay? So that's the secret behind it. A lot of times we don't get told those secrets in real life. So that's round 3. I'm going to give you 10 less seconds. You know that. I'm also going to put a grid in there for you to compartmentalize it for you a little bit. Ready, go. Stop. How'd y'all do? Again, remember, now we're 20 seconds less than the first round, 10 seconds less than the last one. All right. So that was kind of setting it in order a little bit. How else could we set these numbers in order? Put them in order? Yeah. Okay. So round 4, I'll give you 30 seconds, and they're in order. Ready? Go. Time. Again, 10 less seconds. We're down to 30 seconds, though. So, what's the pesky part of this process right now? Yeah, so now what can we do? Set in order and standardize how they look, right? So now I'm going to give you 20 seconds. It's standardized, and they're set in order the way you'd like. Ready? Go. Time. How do we do that round? At 20 seconds. 31. So getting a little bit better, right? 31 and 20 versus, even our best case was 13 and 60. Okay. Next round, round 6. The goal in round 6, because remember, 5S is all about problem solving, okay? The goal in round 6 is to identify the missing numbers. I'll give you 60 seconds to identify the missing numbers. Ready? Go. Time. What are the missing numbers?
18, 20,
18 is correct. 18 is correct. 41 is the other. Wow. I didn't get to 41 yet. How was it trying to find the missing numbers in that? How was it trying to find the missing numbers when we went back to? It was fine. All right, let's do round 7 real quick. You don't even have to do a darn thing. Tell me the missing numbers. Just look up front. A lot quicker, wasn't it? That's the reason why we like the 5S, to make our problems as obvious as possible, as quick. Fail fast, fail safe, fail cheap. It allows us to fail very fast when we have a problem and get into problem solving as quickly as possible. Okay? So hopefully that kind of drives home the importance of 5S. Another tool that goes hand in hand with 5S is what we call point of use storage. Okay? But it's locating stuff as close to where we use it as possible. Okay? So a quick everyday type of thing, your toothbrush and your toothpaste. Where do you locate it? Okay, typically in your bathroom. All right. Anybody located not in their bathroom? Some folks actually put it in their bedroom, right in their bedstand to remember. Okay, whatever, works for you. And does everybody in your family have their own toothpaste and toothbrush? Huh? Yeah, why? It's not that expensive in this day and age to have your own toothbrush and toothpaste, right? And so, and back in the day, though, you actually had to be very wealthy to own a toothbrush. And so if you owned one, you were sharing one with your family, believe it or not. Toothbrushes were made of horsehair at the time. But now, the cost, and the key point here is it's because the cost is not that significant for a toothbrush and toothpaste. So we're able to have several of them located in different bathrooms or with individually for our folks. Vacuum cleaner, how many of those do you have? One. Yeah, some folks will go 2, 3. But typically one. Where do you locate it? Closet. Yeah, in a closet, right? You don't have a vacuum cleaner in every single room. That a little waste, transportation and motion, but a vacuum is more expensive, isn't it? So what we have to do when we start thinking point of use is look at it from that cost perspective and go, some of our low-cost things, maybe we can keep. This was actually a hospital system up in Wisconsin. That's actually where they kept the patient's meds under lock and key. Point of use. That way they didn't have to go to a Pyxis machine. Okay? Or, well, the same picture. So that's just a little bit of more of a close-up. That way, they did point of use for the medication. And what does that do? It keeps the nurses from having to wait in line to get the meds. Okay? So point of use, it's, again, we just have to look at it from both the perspective of cost and how often do we use it. So improvements, a lot of times we can do project improvement. We have shown that Superman there, and usually there's a project manager for that project. The learning comes by usually the project manager. Me doing a decade of project management and construction, I learned a lot. But did my team members learn a lot? No. As a project manager, you're doing all the learning because you're running the project. There's another tool out there called a rapid improvement event. And that's where, and I'll never forget, part of Gadsden too, Jim, was when you said, I suppose we're going to be doing all these Kaizen events. And I go, I don't know. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But a rapid improvement event, what it does is you put together like a group of 8 to 10 folks, cross-functional, different departments, different sets of eyes, and you try to improve a process as quickly as possible, making changes right then and there. Typically, it's going to be like a 3 to 5 day event, okay, of trying to improve a process. Again, you see a few more of the Supermen there. That's because the people that are doing the learning are the folks that are part of that team, right? And maybe some of the folks affected by the team. Kata brings, this Kata piece I'm going to introduce now is how do we improve a little bit every day. So like a rapid improvement, you improve, go up a little bit, do the next one, go up a little bit. A lot of organizations are very successful doing rapid improvement events. We've kind of adopted the Kata process because it allows us to try to improve a little bit every day. Okay, so what the heck is this? To say it a different way, to save 1 minute, you have to find 60 ways to save 1 second. And that's what the whole idea of Kata is. How do we just save those 1 seconds each and every day instead of going for the home run? Okay. So what is Kata? Anybody familiar with a Kata? Ever hear the word Kata? What is from what?
From Lean and off the glass performance.
Oh, so from a Lean perspective. Okay. Anybody besides Lean? It's good. I usually don't get that. Anybody ever have anybody in karate? There you go. Karate. A lot of times there's katas, and kata just means habit. It just means habit. Okay. You have a routine or that habit that you practice, and you practice over and over, and it's to develop new skills. And a good example, that's my daughter actually when she was 16, 10 years ago. And she was learning to drive. Remember learning to drive? Were you able to do the things you're able to do now? Yeah. Okay, let me rephrase it. Anybody have one of their 16-year-olds driving and you're in the passenger seat, and how do you react? You don't have the habits built yet, right? You don't have your habits built when you're driving. And that is, that only comes with practice. We used to always, especially backing up or parallel parking, I always did it in Shrug Jordan parking lot at Auburn University because there was plenty of room to make mistakes. There were no cars on a Sunday. But that's all we're trying to do when we talk about continuous improvement. There are two katas. One we call a coaching kata and one that we call an improvement kata. And they are kind of linked. And again, we'll dive much deeper into this kata stuff. But let me just give you an idea of what, basically we're trying to make an automatic habit. The improvement kata is the key point I'm going to drive home today a little bit. There are 4 parts to it. One is the challenge. All right, wouldn't it be great if we were able to get the same day test results, same day appointment and same day test results in breast cancer care center? That could be a challenge. Okay. The challenge then, the second step is we have to go see the current condition. And what do we mean by seeing the current condition? Yeah, we have to go walk that process. We have to understand what really is happening with data and direct observation, understanding what really is happening. Because then we can set what we call a target condition. Okay? And I'll show you an example here shortly, but as we set that target condition, there might be multiple targets that will experiment to. So all we're saying here is that 4th step is experimenting to get the target, okay? And then we know there's going to be obstacles along the way. How do you, if you're in a cave with a flashlight, how do you, and the flashlight only can go so far in a cave, right? And the light, how do you see further? Take at least my first step. That's all we're talking about with the Kata process. Take a step, experiment, do something to get a little bit closer to that target. Because after we take that first step, if we're following PDCA, we're going to go, what did we learn? And what's my next step? All right, constantly taking steps. And then, sooner or later, we will reach that target, and then we'll set a new target closer to the challenge. And then we'll set another target close to the challenge. And then over time, a challenge could be 6 months out, a year out, 3 years out. Over time, we will attain that challenge by setting these target conditions to get there. So a few key points on it for the challenge. When you can't reach, but you still try. You don't have to reach the overall challenge right away. That's why I always kind of go, is that challenge something we want to do in a year, 6 months, 3 years? What is it? Okay. For the obstacles that we go through, the path is never predictable. Every time we change something, other things will change. And that's what I do like about this process, is when we change something, we're going to be studying, following our PDCA, PDSA, and kind of going, okay, what changed? Upstream and downstream. And then you experiment to get to the next goal, which makes this process a scientific process. Okay. So here's a quick example, and then I've only got a couple slides left, so I won't keep it much longer. The improvement kata. So this is something right from a hospital where there was their overall length of stay. Okay. And when we started this process, it was February. And when we actually dug into it using the Valley Stream map that we talked about, we found that, guess what? It was admissions length of stay that was driving their overall length of stay to be higher. And so we kind of took on both. They ended up putting, I'll show you a Kata board here in a second, these Kata boards in ER, EVS, and in the inpatient. So 3 different Kata boards. And again, trying to make sure that we are working together as a team. Breaking down the silos. We all had the same challenge, right? And so over the course of time, by following, there's my target condition, there's my current condition. They listed all the obstacles preventing them from being able to get to their target condition, and then they would just experiment. And this was EVS. What their next step was, what did they expect by taking that step? Okay? And when would I have that step done? And then after that step got implemented, what happened? Did it actually work or not work? And then what did we learn? And a lot of times, what do we learn? Leads us to our next step. We just follow this relentlessly. And the more experiments we can get in place, the quicker we do our experiments, small experiments, the faster we actually get the improvement going. If we're only doing it once a month, we're not going to get much results. But if we're doing it once a day or a couple times a week, we can really start getting some good small improvements that steadily get us to where we want to go. This is actually from North Mississippi, so when Dan talked about Tupelo, I was like, yeah, been there, done that. But they really adopted the Kata process there. And this was actually we put them in teams of 3. It was a leadership team and their executive team. And this was the CEO, HR, and one other person, I can't remember their position. That was their board. And the target condition here was offer. So the problem they were trying to solve is trying to get CNAs hired and into position as quick as possible. And so the offer, their current condition was 11 days. They didn't want to touch that yet. They said the same. But their current condition of 25 days for new employee orientation, they were looking to get that down to 22. But the really cool part was when you start looking at their numbers and the fact that they had all these experiments going, it's hard to read, but they were able to get the new employee orientation down to 13 days and their offer down to 9 days. That's 22 days instead of 36 days. And that was only in 2 months. Their challenge was offer in 7. They wanted to get the entire process down to 7 days. Okay? So as soon as they reach that first target condition, they can reset it to get closer to their challenge again. And all they did was follow the process, walk it. And this was really cool from an HR perspective because it was all about understanding the value stream of what it is for a CNA to put in their paper, to find the ad, to look for their ad, to get the interview, to go through the drug testing, to, a lot of non-value added steps along the way. So, and with that, I will stop.